Hey, my dear friend, did you know? Back in the 1850s, when the Hmong people still lived in the southern mountains of China, there was a heartbreaking story passed down through generations, a story about love, family, and the kind of loss that time could never heal. Long ago, in a remote village nestled deep in the forested mountains, there lived a little boy named David. From a very young age, he had already lost both of his parents. Fortunately, David was taken in by his uncle, his father's older brother. This uncle, too, had once been an orphan, and had grown up alongside David's father. That shared past made the bond even deeper. He raised David not as a nephew, but truly like his own son. David grew up surrounded by his uncle's love, the crowing of roosters at dawn, and the gentle sound of streams in the evening. Though he lacked his parents' love, he was a kind, hard-working boy, always grateful for what he had. As David grew into a young man, like many others his age, he began to think about love. One day, at a village market, he met Lina, a gentle girl, with a smile as warm as the morning sun. From that very first encounter, something clicked. They became close. They herded buffalo together, fetched water from the river, and dreamed of a small home filled with laughter and the smell of corn harvests. After a year of getting to know each other, David decided to marry Lina. His uncle was overjoyed. He personally prepared the dowry and organized the wedding. Lina's parents had no objections. They knew David was a good man, and they respected how deeply his uncle loved him. And so, under the rhythms of traditional Hmong music, with dancing and laughter echoing through the mountains, their simple yet beautiful wedding was held. After their wedding, David and Lina moved in with his uncle. Together, they learned how to grow rice, raise chickens, and build a life through honest work. A year later, Lina gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, a blessing that brought immeasurable joy to the entire household. David became even more hardworking. He woke up at dawn every day to provide for his family. He wanted to give his daughter a better life than the one he had growing up. Seeing that David was now responsible and mature, his uncle gave the couple their own piece of land, steep but fertile plot, perfect for growing corn. David and Lina built a small hut on the hillside and began their life anew, full of dreams. Before long, Lina became pregnant again. They thought their peaceful days would last forever. One day, it rained heavily. Despite the storm, David and Lina went out to weed their cornfield. The ground was slippery, but they were used to it. Around noon, they took a break. David went down to the stream to fetch water with a bamboo tube, while Lina stayed at the hut. When David returned, he saw Lina standing in the yard, brushing her hair, smiling at him. Just as she turned to go back inside, her foot slipped on the wet ground. David rushed toward her, slipping and stumbling himself. When he reached her, she was already unconscious. Blood soaked the ground around her. The fall must have hurt the baby she was carrying. Panicked, David carried her into the hut and tried everything he could to revive her, but they were alone. There were no doctors, no help. Lina grew colder, and finally, she took her last breath in his arms. David wanted to take his daughter back to the village to get help. But then he hesitated. What if Lina woke up and saw no one there? Would she be afraid? Would she feel abandoned? So he waited. 1 hour, then 2. The sky began to darken. Finally, he wrapped Lina in a blanket, carried his daughter on his back, and headed toward the village. But halfway there, he remembered their promise to each other. No matter what happens, we will never leave each other. He turned back. David cut bamboo and tied together a simple stretcher. He laid Lina gently inside. Then, with his daughter on his back and his wife behind him, he began the long journey through the rain and mud. He slipped, fell, stood up, and walked again. A trip that usually took just 1 hour became a never-ending struggle. As dawn approached, David finally reached the edge of the village, but his body could no longer go on. He collapsed by the roadside, while his baby cried softly in the rain. By sheer luck, a couple passing by on their way to the fields heard the baby's cries. They rushed over and found David unconscious, Lina long gone. They carried the child back to the village and alerted everyone. The villagers helped bring David and Lina back. When David awoke, it was too late. Lina had already been buried. He told his uncle and the villagers everything that happened with a hoarse voice and empty eyes. After that day, David was never the same. He rarely spoke. He wandered the village aimlessly, drowning his sorrow in alcohol, trying to forget Lina, the kind, gentle wife who had left him behind. One morning, David asked his uncle to watch over his daughter. He said he'd go up to the cornfield to pull weeds. It was the same field where the tragedy happened that day. Evening came, but David never returned. The villagers went to look for him, and what they found left them silent. David had hanged himself in the little hut, and so, just like that, he was gone. He left behind his little girl, now an orphan, just like he once was. Final thoughts. The story of David and Lina isn't just a tragedy. It's a reminder that life is fragile and nothing is guaranteed. Happiness may feel within reach, but it can vanish in the blink of an eye. And sometimes, the deepest love is also the deepest sorrow. The story ends here for today. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. What are your thoughts on this story? Feel free to share them. Have a peaceful night's sleep, and I'll see you again in the next story.